They were always talking about how there was no money. We're broke, we're broke, we're broke. One day she gave me a few cents to go buy a candy. I went down to buy the candy. The grocer wasn't looking, so I stole it.
Sunny days, sweeping the clouds away. On my way to where the air is sweet. And she knows exactly how to get to Sesame Street. Y'all know these lyrics, right? They're familiar? Okay. So hey everybody, this is Evelyn and this is Reppin. I am so excited for today's episode. It's moments like these that make me so grateful to have a platform like this. Because it's where I get to bring on incredible guests like the one I have today. She's a trailblazer, a legend, and she's truly been a cornerstone of so many of our childhoods. Because for 44 seasons on Sesame Street, she was the beloved Maria, a role that connected with millions of children and parents alike. Her extraordinary work has earned her not one, but 2 Emmy nominations. And in 2016, she received the National Academy of Arts and Sciences Lifetime Achievement Daytime Emmy. But that's just the beginning. She was also a writer for Sesame Street, where, get this, she earned 15 Emmys and took home the prestigious 2022 Beacon Award from PBS. And if you think that's all, nah, think again. Because she also created and developed Alma's Way, an animated children's series with Fred Rogers Productions. The show follows a 6-year-old Alma Rivera, Puerto Rican girl growing up in New York City, as she navigates her vibrant Latino neighborhood, learning decision-making and social awareness skills along the way. Alma's Way has won an Imagen Award for Best Youth Programming and a 2022 Emmy nomination for Outstanding Writing for a Preschool Animated Program. And her journey is nothing short of inspiring. She's a first-generation mainland Puerto Rican raised in the South Bronx, where she turned a scholarship to Carnegie Mellon University into an opportunity that helped her contribute to Broadway's Godspell. It truly is an honor to have her on the show today. So please say hello to the amazing Sonia Manzano. Sonia, thank you. I can't even tell you. Thank you so much for being here and being on the show. Before we started recording, I literally told you I'm so excited that I'm almost peeing my pants. So I'm not too proud to admit that. But thank you so much. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm as best as I can be under the terrible pressures that we're living under these days, but I'm fine. Thank you. And thank you for the kind words of how you felt about me. Obviously, your sincerity is coming through loud and clear.
Well, thank you for not hanging up on me if I'm telling you that I'm peeing in my pants. I'm so excited. Seriously, Sonia, you are a legend. You've definitely been a part of my childhood, and I'm sure many, many generations since you were on Sesame Street for, hold it, 44 years.
Yes.
I can't name anything that lasts 44 years.
I know.
You were one of the major trailblazers of the show. Can you talk a little bit about some of your experiences of being the first representation of anyone that wasn't really white on TV? Can you talk about what some of the experiences you were going through?
Sure. I always say that the reason I left Sesame Street after 44 years was because that was long enough for me to wait for Oscar the Grouch to propose.
Did he ever?
No, he never did. He's my favorite puppet. But I was raised in the Bronx in the 50s, and I loved television. I just always loved television. It was like this mirror into the bigger world out there. Now, it was nothing like the world I lived in. It was the world of Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best and all of those, and Westerns. But still, the storytelling was hilarious. I loved the Sid Caesar. My mother loved the Show of Shows. We would laugh. Now, every time you saw a person of color scream, and you'd get the neighbors to come and make sure to take your pulse and make sure you hadn't passed out and were seeing things. So it was very rare to see that. So Sesame Street comes along. I'll never forget the first time I saw it at Carnegie Mellon University. When they cut to Susan and Gordon, I absolutely flipped. I mean, I couldn't believe it. They were this beautiful Black couple in this urban environment. The whole show was zany and fabulous. And they were there so that underserved African-American children would have role models, somebody they could relate to. Because how could they learn from a foreign person or somebody that was not in their world?
Yeah, there's no connection.
There's no connection, and you really feel like you were invisible, like you weren't part of the big society when you're not reflected in it. So then I got cast as Maria. They were hoping that I would do for the Hispanic audience, Hispanics then, what Susan and Gordon were doing for the African-American audience. And let me tell you, the reason I got cast was because Mexican-American activists on the West Coast demanded it so.
Oh.
So they said, wait a minute, this is public television and you're doing this for African-Americans. We want representation. And that's why I got cast. Emilio Delgado got cast, a Chicano and a Puerto Rican. So we got cast. But then, oh gosh, I have to represent Latin people. Who am I? Who elected me president of Puerto Ricans? And, I don't know what, should I look like this or should I look like that? Or should I be funny or should I be serious? Or,
Right.
They used to put makeup on me. John Stone, a creator of the show, came in one day and he pulled me off the set, pulled me into the makeup room and he said, he was shaking. He was so mad. He said, I go through all the trouble of casting a real person and you make her up to look like a Cupid doll. You're 20 years old and they're putting makeup on you. Well, the makeup artist got really nervous. They were all like soap opera people in that era. So they didn't really know how to do dark skin and like that. So she nervously took my makeup off. And then as I saw my real face emerge, I thought to myself, these people aren't kidding. They really do want a real person. They really do. So I felt that Maria had to be whoever I was at that particular moment in time. Now, I didn't want makeup. I didn't want hair. I mean, those early years of me are like really weird.
Sonia, we're all going to look back at our high school yearbook photos and be like, yee,
I know.
Please.
Right. So they allowed that. So every year I was able to be whoever I was. I think that's what's interesting about the show. We were allowed to age. Whereas on most television shows, you're a character at a time. And then when you're not the ingenue anymore, they get another ingenue.
Right. So here's my question to you. You brought up an interesting point. I remember you said this in a previous interview, which I loved. You became the Maria because you needed to create what you needed to see. Now, when you went from growing up in the South Bronx, a poor neighborhood, it was filled with tenements at that point. I remember you talking about it in another interview. You didn't see anyone that looked like you. And then you step into this role in your early 20s, which, by the way, is a time where people are still trying to figure out who the hell they are. You have this enormous task of being on TV and, like you said, representing an entire culture. You're still trying to figure out, who you are privately as an individual. And you're doing this after not seeing anyone on TV that looked like you. So you're basically, if I'm understanding it correctly, you're almost like trying to carve a sculpture out of a stone with a spoon. Like, how do you do it? You know what I mean? That's like a huge task. So how did you find all of those identities, your personal one, the one you put it on TV, and then deal with that responsibility, both on a very public level, and also a private one?
I found the joy in not having any footsteps in which to follow.
Oh.
When you don't have any footsteps to follow, you can make it up as you go along. And you can't ignore the fact that it was the 60s. It was the civil rights movement. It was Martin Luther King Jr. It was Malcolm X. It was the Young Lords. Everybody was seeing the world in a different way. It was topsy-turvy. Columbia students were protesting. in institutions that we, people of color, were trying to get into. So it was kind of like the opening scene in the Humphrey Bogart movie Casablanca, where it's all flipped. Society's roles are all flipped. So that was helpful. We were examining everything. When they asked me to be myself, and I was myself on the show, I started speaking Spanglish on the show. So then I said, okay, they want me to be myself. I'm throwing around words like rufo for roof and parquear for park and lonchar for lunch. Well, the academics said that's not Spanish. They said to me, what are you speaking? I said, of course it's Spanish. That's what my mother talks. Well, I didn't know she was the Mrs. Malaprop of Latin. She mixed up words all the time. And
that's the way it is with immigrant families,
With immigrant families, she just mixed it all up.
Yeah.
But I wasn't afraid of backing down. I faced it head on. And then I made the decision that I didn't want Mexican-American kids not to know what I was saying. Or Cuban-American kids not to know. So I decided that whatever Spanish spoken on the show should be recognizable to the majority of Spanish speakers. If I'm making a movie about Puerto Ricans, of course I'm going to speak Spanglish. Right. Be like The Commitments about Irish people. Be, if you know that movie.
Authentic.
Yeah, it'll be authentic. But those are kind of the decisions that I think when you didn't back down, you can solve. That's not to say that I wasn't, I didn't swallow the pill of trying to fit in, because early on, and I'm ashamed to admit this, the producers assumed I had been born on the island. So somebody wrote something about how, Maria comes from Puerto Rico. And I thought, I better not say anything because I'll be more authentic to them and more acceptable to them if I continue this ruse.
Right.
Well, then I started thinking, well, what if they ask me what the capital of the island is and I don't know the answer? And you can't do your best constantly looking over your shoulder to see if you're going to get busted on some...
So what'd you do?
I finally went up to them and I said, I have to tell you, I'm not from the, I don't know. I was there when I was 14 years old. I'm not from the island.
Yeah.
The thing is, they couldn't have cared less.
Oh, that's great.
It was my own self-censorship. So I warned people about kind of like swallowing the Kool-Aid of not being good enough.
Yeah, there's plenty of that.
Plenty of that.
There's plenty of that, especially for women, unfortunately. I think we all drink that in like Costco-sized portions.
Right.
I think that's so interesting because, we're talking about the 60s, which you just recapped. And I have to say, it sounds very familiar. I don't know, just saying. But the thing that really struck me is you're in your 20s, you're still trying to figure yourself out, but you had the wherewithal and the courage or grit of saying, I'm okay with coloring out the lines. I'm glad I don't have footsteps, because I think for some people that's frightening not to have any sort of borders or parameters to work when you're almost like just free falling, because that's essentially what you're doing, right? Because you have no reference points. I think that takes a lot of guts and courage. And I think for you to know that and to not be daunted by that, and also to say, hey, you know what? I'm not going to swallow the pill and be shoved into these labels at, in your 20s on national television, representing an entire culture. That was your task. That's pretty, I'm sorry, I'm going to curse in front of you, Sonia, but that's pretty badass. Like, where did that come from?
I think that I've always been a practical person and a realistic person. And I think also I was raised in a very, my household was ruled by domestic violence.
Oh, well,
and so we went from one event to another. We moved And then they would reconcile, and then we would move, and then they would reconcile. So I kind of lived, my siblings and I, in constant terror of something happening. And my mother had this peculiar habit of, if my dad wasn't home yet, she'd put the sharp knives in the oven so they wouldn't be accessible.
Oh, my God.
And then when we would ask her, she would say, "Oh, nothing."
Oh my God. That's tough.
I know.
So
Now,
going on Sesame Street doing what you did was like a walk in the park.
Hey, exactly. I mean,
Oh,
it
shit.
was sort of, if you can do that,
Yeah.
then you grow up and kids are talking about being depressed. And I mean, I never thought I was depressed. I thought I was, you'd be accused of putting on airs.
Right.
You're
right.
upset? No, are you? You would be accused of being some sort of wuss. So
I think that's an immigrant mentality, though.
Yes, yeah, right.
I think because my parents were kind of like that to some degree. Like,
Yeah.
suck it up. What do you've got to worry about?
Right.
We've got like a TV in the house, a phone. Like, what the hell do you want?
Yeah.
Right?
We're not.
Get your work done.
Get your work done. Do your homework. We ate every day. We had 3 meals a day. I mean, we had to stretch, but we had that. You're in that world, then you're thrust into this other world. It's like going to war and then coming out and saying, I can manage this. And then I think because my mother was always saying things weren't what they seem.
What do you mean?
He doesn't mean it.
Gotcha.
We'd never be hurt. Things will work out. You never look on the bright side. That kind of stuff kind of pushed me into always seeing what it is. I talk to a lot of people and they say, well, I should have gotten the part, or it should have been like this, or the company should have treated me that way. And then you're wasting time about how they should have.
Gotcha.
See what they did. See the writing on the wall.
Yeah. Did you get that perspective very early on because of your sort of unstable, volatile family situation?
I guess so. I mean, everything, I always thought, if I can make it out of this, everything is going to be gravy.
Every child deserves a safe, nurturing home. But I think in some ways, if you're able to convert and transcend that trauma into something that is unfortunately, you were forged in fire, that it gives you that street savvy. I mean, girl, you're from the Bronx, so I ain't even gonna mess with you. But, you were able to transcend that. But I will say this also, and this kind of gets me to my next point. The other thing that you said, which was you became Maria to be what you needed to see. And PBS and Sesame Street and the executive producers, like, huge accolades to them for, at that time, opening the door, allowing real life to be portrayed on TV, and to allow you the space and the latitude to be who you are. That's huge. But I think the thing that's really interesting is your knowing inclusion and exclusion, because I think from everything that I've read about you, from your 44 freaking years at Sesame Street, and very good scoop to know that you were crushing on Oscar the Grouch, to creating Alma's Way. Alma's Way is fantastic because it is about a precocious 6-year-old Puerto Rican girl who is really smart. And you break it down in the character where she's able to do critical thinking and to process things and not to take it at face value and then that's it, right?
Right.
So I guess the 2 points that I'm trying to make is you just laid out that your mom said, it's not this, it's that, but you're able to see things for what it is. You now have made an entire lifetime career in making sure that people are seen and heard, validated. You said in multiple interviews that Alma's Way is about letting people know just because you failed tests, which I failed math 3 times, it doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that you can't think. In terms of a larger picture, where did this come from? Seeing people for what it is and making sure that you continue to give them a hand up.
Well, as a kid, there were a lot of, obviously, my mother would tell me these things that didn't make sense. But I would think of things myself to sort my life out. For example, they were always talking about how there was no money. We're broke, we're broke, we're broke. Me, one day she gave me a few cents to go buy a candy. I went down to buy the candy. The grocer wasn't looking, so I stole it. And I went back upstairs and I shared it with her. In the middle of eating this candy, I said, "Oh, and guess what? Here's the money back. We didn't have to pay for it because I stole it because we don't have any money." Well, it was the opposite reaction. She didn't scream and yell, but in mid-bite, she said, "Oh, no, we're not that broke. You're not supposed to steal. The Virgin Mary cries when children steal." I had to go back and pay the grocer. But I think that's a moment where a kid sees what's going on. Your parents are saying you're broke all the time, so you try to adjust because you're thinking it through. Now, that wasn't a good solution, but...
Yeah, that's a lesson left off of Sesame Street.
And Alma's way that, that she would do that. But it proves to me that at a very early age, you are thinking and trying to put things together.
Right.
And I took a lesson from Sesame Street when I was asked to create a show by PBS. PBS looked around what was going on in society. Okay, it wasn't it was the civil rights movement. It was the 60s. Yeah. It was understanding that underserved children couldn't read and people who run the world could read.
Right.
Basic. So I looked around. I said, what do I see? And what I was seeing was kids who were stressed, couldn't pass tests, overcrowded classrooms. In the old days, your teacher would say, "Oh, you'll get it, maybe in 6 months." Now everybody has to learn everything at the same moment.
Yeah. Instantaneous.
Instant. You hit, and it's like the group. So if you don't fit into this group, it's interesting. It's almost like so not admiring the individual, which you'd think is an American quality. No, you have to fit in. You have to fit in.
Right.
So all these kids who didn't speak English, blah, 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 thought they were stupid because they didn't have the answer. So I wanted Alma to celebrate that kids can think. Certainly because of my environment, my mind was my domain. If I had a babysitter who made me sit in the corner for an hour instead of interacting with me, I would make up a dance with my feet off the chair. I would entertain myself. And I think that that's a power. And it saved me from the chaos that was around.
So many powerful lessons that you just sort of laid out at this point. I think the ability to be able to see what actually is versus what you want to see is another element that's sort of added to the many issues that we may be having these days, that we live in such an instantaneous world, and I love that you just said, we need to learn things instantaneously, right? And if it's not, there's no room or compassion if you can't. That's actually not something I was aware of. I was aware that we live in an instant world, like instant food, instant coffee, noodles. We get our information through sound bites and headlines and flashes of images. But no one's sort of taking a minute and going, wait, hold up. Like, what is this? Like, let's think about this. And it seems like you've always had this ability stemming from, as a kid, it seems like it's threaded through from your personal trauma and family, from domestic violence, all the way to Sesame Street, to Alma's Way. Like, you make sure that you do your part in allowing other people to be seen, to say, I see you, and to build them up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very, very much interested in other people's lives.
Right.
I love that show, Atlanta. I was obsessed by this show. I didn't know about this they're a different generation, younger than me. Paperboy, the rapper that Glover was trying to promote. All of that wonderful storytelling of a different culture than mine was interesting, calming for me to see how other people solve their problems. The other one was Reservation Dogs, about the native, took place on a reservation in Oklahoma, I believe.
Okay.
And there was spiritualism, and you really should check out this show. I learned about that culture because it was through the storytelling, which I always used to, when I used to watch Gunsmoke and stuff when I was a kid, and they were like Native Americans, I always used to wonder, where are they now? You know,
You were a much more advanced kid than I was.
I mean, do they know about me in the Bronx? I mean, where are these people?
Oh my God.
When I see stories about other people like that I find so interesting, and it enlightens me, and it comforts me to hear other stories of other people and how they solve things.
You know, I joke about that, and I'm not joking also because you're obviously far more advanced as a 10-year-old than I was. But I will say that, and I've said this in a few other places, certainly privately and in a few interviews I've actually done, is when I was growing up, my parents were immigrants. I was born in one of the boroughs of New York, and I didn't know English. You know, I spoke Chinese at home. And when I turned on the TV, and I'm not even kidding you about this, I saw Planet of the Apes, Coneheads. I didn't understand what Coneheads are, and they were live action. I knew the difference between cartoon, but like live action, I was like 7. I'm like, yo, why are these like, are these actual monkeys? What's going on here? So I was like, is this real? Versus like puppets was a little bit more like, okay, this is a puppet. Didn't see any Asians except maybe like the one. And then I watched you on Sesame Street, and I did feel good about seeing you and the other castmates on Sesame Street learning English and feeling welcomed. Did you get that response overall? What's it like to be on the receiving end of raising a few generations?
Of course, it's wonderful, and I'm very gratified when people validate that they connected with me.
I mean, every single thing that you guys did had important life lessons of just basic civility, behavior, kindness. I think we all need to watch many, many episodes of Sesame Street right now. I really just appreciate the whole energy of Sesame Street. You've taken on this massive trailblazing role, and you've taken it on beautifully with so much integrity and grace and honored that show, even till now. You've transcended on screen to being a creator, a writer, and an executive producer. And let me just say this. If I were to read out your whole accolades, we'd be here for another hour. But you are a 15-time Emmy winner. 15. Hello. But you've been able to transcend even those roles in Hollywood, which for anyone that's not in media, that's a very difficult thing to do. So you've also broken barriers behind the scenes. Why did you take that on? And what were some of the challenges you faced? And how did you navigate that?
Well, I think that the 15, I did get a Lifetime Achievement Award, which was just mine. And a lot of the Emmys have to do with being part of the Sesame Street,
Girl, own it. You have so many accolades. Like, seriously.
Thank you very much. But the way I started was the actors on Sesame Street would have these meetings with the producers and the writers. And the writers at that time, there was no children's writing style. They were like playwrights, people from advertising, authors. That genre did not exist.
Okay.
Of children's television writers. So they would ask us kind of what we wanted to do, and I would say, I love Chaplin. I remember when I saw Chaplin, I was obsessed. I said, I love Chaplin, and I think Maria should do this. And when they would write what I suggested, it validated it for me. Then I realized my ideas are good. They are using them. So the next logical step is write it myself.
That's so
And,
great. But that takes guts.
it does.
Belief in yourself and guts, that's huge. That's tough.
So what I did was I would complain about the Latin bits. I would say they seem so corny after, it's like a lesson in Spanish. Now, after Cookie Monster eats the table, it's hilarious or something.
Right.
The next bit is some Spanish bit. So by comparison, the Spanish bit seemed dull.
Flat, yeah.
Flat, right next to it. So as I'm complaining about it, the executive producer at that time, Dulcie Singer, who I appreciate so much, showed me the curriculum book. She says, here's so you could know what we're up against, number one. And if you have complaints about it, why don't you try it yourself? Or maybe she didn't say, I don't remember, but
something to that effect, yeah.
Put your money where your mouth is kind of thing. Okay. So I waited. I wrote 3 bits, a Muppet bit and 2 Muppet bits and a street bit. And I waited till the last day of taping before I slipped to the producers, just in case they were so horrible, we'd have some months to get over the humiliation.
Okay, so you were a little nervous.
Oh, sure.
Like, seriously.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And then how was it received?
They were shot. They were actually
immediately,
shot.
Right?
Immediately. Yeah. They were audition pieces. And I would do things that were really odd, like I would write for the street without puppets. Every scene had a Muppet in it.
Right.
You wouldn't have a Maria and Luis just doing something.
Chilling. Yeah. Talking.
Right. No. And I would write scenes, and I wrote that takeoff of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers doing Hola, which is a takeoff of that movie Top, where they do a big number.
Yeah.
Because I thought, what's the coolest, most sophisticated way I present Spanish language?
And it's a whole new way of showing people, right? I don't understand why there's such a disconnect with people not seeing people of colors or different representations just as human beings. We're not a different species. So I don't know why that is so hard to close sometimes.
I don't either. I look, in the 70s, you'd watch a sitcom, and when the Spanish person came on or the Asian American person came on, you waited for the ethnic joke because that was the only reason they were there.
Yeah. We were the punchline.
Yeah. And Sesame Street, I got married on the show and had a baby because we had the same hopes and dreams as any other American. Get married, have a baby, raise a child, have an education, go on vacation once a year. I mean, whatever it was.
Happy family, yeah.
Just like everyone else. And we were able to achieve that. That hasn't exactly happened. And now, the climate of the country is certainly not conducive to that.
Right. I joke about it, but it's true. You have been literally entrenched in generations of childhood memories. What was one experience or maybe a conversation that you had with someone you met either on the street or at a fan convention or maybe someone you worked with, just in your life that you experienced that really hit you of the impact that you made?
There really have been a lot. There was, let's say a woman came up to me and she's blonde and blue-eyed, and she says that we look exactly alike or that we're exactly the same, that she related to me in that fashion. And there's a fan letter that I cherish. And this person said to me, I watched you in a horrible environment. I'm Black and gay, and my parents hated me for that. And if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have believed there were decent people in the world. I mean, I cherished that letter.
Powerful.
It was a very powerful letter. And people who say, if I hadn't seen you, I never would have thought to go into television, or it would not have occurred to me. And that's true. If you can't see it, you can't,
True.
you
can't be it.
can't be it.
I think that you've offered that validation to so many people on different levels. I think it's not just about you being, back in the day, the term was Hispanic or Latin.
Latinx now.
Latinx now. But I think I want to take that one step further because it's also, you were wholly authentic all the way through. And I think that gave us the permission, regardless of where you're from and what color, to be you. Just be
Be
you.
you,
But
yes.
be kind.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick. It's like it's not that deep.
Right. People always, and this is remarkable, Alma's Way, and I have to thank Fred Rogers Productions and Ellen Doherty, who said, we were going to put the train in.
Trolley.
No, not the trolley, the number 6 train.
Okay.
Travels in the Bronx, right?
Okay, yeah. Trolley's big bad brother.
That's the other shows. How close to the reality should we be? Like, we always knew that Sesame Street was like Harlem-ish because of the brownstone.
Right.
But it wasn't like an exact street.
Right.
So we were fooling around with how close we should be. And I remembered that the more specific Sesame Street was, the more people it reached. Now, you'd think it should be the other way around, right? You'd think it would be like, if you're more generic, more people will like you. You'll be universal. But that's not the case. The more New York we were, the more people in Japan liked it, or Ohio, or
why is that?
I don't know, but it proves that the more authentic and real you are, the more people you will reach. Somehow, I think truth travels further. Like if you're sitting in the back of the house in a theater and there's an actor and he pinpoints some emotion and it goes to the back of the house because it's so true. I think that I learned that lesson on Sesame, and I took it to Alma's Way, so that there is a number 6 train and there is as real as possible in this animation. It's not a live action, obviously, but...
Well, it's rooted in reality.
Yes, like mommy has a J-Lo type body, and...
Right.
and
that's real.
That's very real, and Papi is Afro-Puerto Rican, which is more authentic, which I actually wrote something like that for Sesame Street, where Maria has a Afro-Puerto Rican cousin, and she tells Telly Monster, when he comes, tell him I'll be right back. This black man shows up, and Telly doesn't tell him. I said, why don't you tell him I was going to be right back? And Telly said, he doesn't look like you. I didn't think he was your cousin.
That's awesome. You spent 44 years trailblazing on Sesame Street, and we can spend a whole 10-parter on that one. But no one would have faulted you, Sonia, if you had just sat back and taken it easy. But you created Alma's Way, which is a huge success and just a fantastic show. You continued the entertainment with purpose, and you continued the thread of building community and each other up and going, hey, I see you, and you are valid and valued. What gives you that drive still to pay it forward in so many ways?
People talk to me about legacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I'm here for a moment. I want to make an impact so that people continue and take thoughts that I might have presented further.
Yeah.
I left Sesame Street. Yes, it was a long time for me to be on that show. And I still had a lot of creative energy, but I wasn't being used that much.
Oh, okay.
Everybody that I knew from the show had died.
Oh, shit.
When I started, I was in my 20s and the mentors were 40.
Right.
So, of course,
they were all
gone. And the actors are, there's few of us left.
Yeah.
And the show changed. And all of a sudden, there's 1,000 kids shows, not just the one. So It was time for me to step back and let the new generation do what they would with Sesame Street. But I still had a lot of energy. I had creative energy. So that's when I started writing books. And I wrote a a picture book, No Dogs Allowed. And I was inspired by Frank McCourt's book, Angela's Ashes,
Oh, interesting.
because he writes about the most miserable Irish American childhood you could possibly imagine. Yet it is so funny and so
Right.
compassionate,
Poignant.
poignant. And I thought to myself, I had a miserable childhood. I could be funny. I could do this too. And that's what made me start sort of writing the children's books. I do have creative energy, and I love writing because you don't need anybody to do it with you. You know,
Right.
tell some village.
Yeah.
In the old days on Sesame Street, it only took one person's vision to make a decision
Yeah.
about something. Now you have to ask like
150 people to put a pair of socks
people.
on.
Yeah, you know, what color should we
Yeah.
use? You know,
You're not exaggerating. Yeah.
I know I'm not.
You're not exaggerating, and it's exhausting sometimes and maddening. As I've gotten to know you and through my research, what continues to amaze me is just your sense of, you know, I'm not going to say legacy, but I think because it didn't start recently. You know, it started when you were, you know, a kid, of wanting to make sure that people were seen and valued. And you continue to do that work. And I think that's a very, I don't want to say elusive, but it's quickly disappearing. It's a characteristic that I think people have either forgotten, lost sight of. Dude, just turn around and like give somebody a hand up. It's not a heavy lift.
I know.
And you are doing all the work with, I mean, I've never done a cartoon and an animation, but I could tell you that production is friggin' hard.
Yes.
It's really so much work. And you still continue to do it. And it's not a question of whether you have drive or not. But let's be honest. Right now, we all could be taking a nap and drinking a pina colada.
Right.
But you're continuing to pave the way to make things better for others.
Thank you.
That's a testament to you, despite your unstable family life. Because you could have been a very bitter, angry, and hurt person.
Sure. And don't think that, you know, I mean, there have been times I remember being in college when I'm relating my story to people and they're shocked. And I feel nothing. And then I'm thinking, how come that was a little weird. I mean, that I said,
Well, you're
did
human.
I totally, how come I'm not feeling what they're feeling? And of course you are. You just hide it. I was reading my memoir out loud for a recording, and I just happened to make a statement that wasn't even one of the deepest, worst parts of the story. And I started crying, and I couldn't contain myself. So you never know where, those things are hidden, those points. A teacher took me to see West Side Story in 1957, and that was major. And she didn't take me all the way. She just pointed me in a certain direction, and then I went. And I believe that if you point people in a certain direction, they'll go, especially kids. You don't have to do the whole thing. It's not that heavy a lift, as you say.
Right. We just need to point, though. I don't know that people are doing that.
Yes, you can point, or you can say, this is how I'm seeing it. How do you see it? The people who are enraged in our society now, we have to find ways of connecting to that.
Yeah.
And understanding where does that come from, and how come it's taken such a foothold? How are we going to connect with that and try to understand this rage?
But here's the difference. I think you're willing to do it, right? A conversation is much like a dance. It's a relationship. It has to take place with two people willing to do it. And I think what I'm seeing personally, and I'm speaking in general terms, is that very few people are willing to participate like you are, to be open, to be willing to say, hey, let me try to understand. I think the only pointing people are doing is pointing at people and talking at people to impose a point of view versus to say, hold up, I don't understand this. Can we talk about it? And to be willing to listen. So it's almost like a dysfunctional relationship. You can't be in a healthy relationship if only one person is trying to make it work. So I think it's a real testament to you that all the way from the time you were 20, you had the guts to take on your own identity and form that on live TV with your with an on-screen persona while society is trying to label you. And that's unfortunately going to transcend time. There's always labels
Right.
that the world is trying to keep you in. And you've not allowed that. And you've, much like you could have been hurt and broken. And I'm not saying you're not because you're human, but you've been able to navigate and manage and to lead by example by continuing the work of giving purpose to entertainment and validating others.
Thank you very much. I mean, you're very kind to say those.
I'm just connecting the dots, Sonia. So here's the thing. I'd love to keep you for another 10 episodes, but I'd like to have you sign off because I know you're pressed for time. Let me know who you are and what you represent.
I am Sonia Manzano, and I represent Sonia Manzano.
A huge thank you to the incredible Sonia Manzano for joining me and for sharing her wisdom, passion, and incredible journey. You don't want to miss out on all the magic she's creating. So go check out Alma's Way and go online and watch her on Sesame Street. And you can follow her on Instagram. I'll have all of her links in the episode description. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to share, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps more amazing people like you find the show. And don't forget, you can follow me on social media, and you can find me and message me on Instagram at Reppin_podcast. And check out YouTube, where you can watch this and some other conversations in full there. The handle for YouTube is Reppin Podcast. Thanks always to Nelson Pinero for all of his time and care. Reppin is a Suburban Outlaw Productions. Until next time, stand up and represent.